Hello,
Hi,
hello, everyone.
Martins.
Hi, Ruth. How you doing?
I'm fine. How are you doing?
Pretty good, pretty good. Good to see you, and welcome to everyone
Yeah, welcome everyone to September edition.
of our African Meetup.
Yep.
Yeah, we are really excited to have you guys here again, joining us from all around the world. Please let us know
Mm.
in YouTube which countries, which continent you're joining us from. So
Yeah.
we're excited to meet you all today.
Yep. Put
Um,
it in the chat.
mhm.
Wherever you're joining from, just, your state, your country, your continent, just put it in the chat.
All right. So, if you've been a regular at this meetup, you might have met me before, but if you haven't, my name is Martins Iwere. I've been with GitHub for close to 4 years now. I'm an account executive here at GitHub. I love investing in real estate, and I'm also a cryptocurrency enthusiast. So, Ruth, why don't you introduce yourself for people that haven't met you yet?
Sure. So, once again, welcome to our African Meetup. I'm Ruth Ikega and I'm from Nigeria, currently in Lagos. So I'm a technical content manager at Animals, a content agency where I do technical writing for, SaaS companies. And I'm also a GitHub star. I'm part of GitHub stars. You can see the star there. And I love advocating for open source and also getting others involved in open source. So you can reach out to me at Kigaruth on Twitter. I am very active there. Yeah.
Perfect.
So
All right.
we have a whole lot for you today. So I'm really excited about, this particular month because we have like, it's been a while, we had like three speakers first.
Yeah.
And aside having three speakers, we have the speakers are amazing. We have Tuba Mamba from South Africa joining us, our special guest. And Tuba is going to be, taking us through South African tech communities, which I'm really, really excited about and want to, learn more about. Nice. Hi, Sibia from South Africa. So we would also have, after Tuba, we would have Bolaji. Bolaji is another amazing speaker from Commerce Layer. He's going to be sharing, effective documentation for open source projects. Documentation is important, so you're going to learn a lot from that session. And to round off for the speakers, we are going to be having Damilola, and Damilola will be introducing, talking about Future Africa, which I'm also excited to learn about. And after, all these exciting sessions, we are going to have a networking session in Zoom where
Mhm.
network speakers, ask questions. And also there's like a special Kahoot games that we play. I don't know why it's not here, but we have Kahoot games during the networking session where, you can win GitHub swags if you win the game. Yep. So that's our lineup for today.
All
So
right.
let's go over to GitHub news. Yeah, we always have something interesting to, GitHub always has interesting stuff every single time. So we're going.
Hey, are you still there, Ruth? All right. So, like Ruth was just saying, we always have different updates every time we meet every month. Like this is a monthly meetup. So the first thing we wanted to highlight here is GitHub Code Spaces. I don't know if you've tried this out, but GitHub Code Spaces launched a couple of I think a couple of weeks or months ago, and basically it's a dev environment within your GitHub UI, so you can spin up a new dev environment with GitHub Code Spaces. And you can have different configuration of like CPUs. If you need a more powerful CPU, you can up level to the size of the CPU that you would need for your code spaces. So code spaces, are now default to github.com. And you can also learn about how we're using GitHub code spaces at GitHub. So, when we launch anything at GitHub, we first of all tested internally, and then we release the open source, and then we have all of the people that use GitHub try things out. So if you want to learn more about Code Spaces, there's a link on my slide, github.co/codespaces slash dash blog. So you can learn more about Code Spaces there. And the second thing I want to highlight on the GitHub news today is the GitHub CLI. So, a couple of quarters ago, we launched GitHub CLI. So now we have the 2.0 version of GitHub CLI. And, there's been a lot of improvements, based on feedback from open source, users all around the world and our customers here at GitHub. So the CLI 2.0 is here, and it includes extensions. Hey, Ruth, I already.
I closed my browser by mistake.
Oh no,
I have
no
so
worries.
many tabs open.
Yeah, no worries. So I already went through Code Spaces. So I was just going through CLI. So
Oh,
maybe,
sweet.
yeah. So maybe you can go through the next one. So as I was saying
Sure.
regarding GitHub CLI. It now includes extensions which allow you to create and share custom commands to improve your overall GitHub workflows. So if you want to learn more about Code Spaces, you can go to, I know there are lots of links here, but I'll share the link on YouTube. It's github.com/CLI, and you can find the release for 2.0. So that's for GitHub CLI. And the next thing I want to talk about is GitHub code scanning. I don't know. I think I've mentioned this previously, but GitHub now has a new static code analysis. GitHub Code Spaces basically is a static code analysis engine that sits natively within GitHub. So if you're building open source projects, you can leverage GitHub code scanning. We call it GitHub Advanced Security. It also includes GitHub secret scanning. So you're not just scanning your code base for known vulnerabilities, open source vulnerabilities that have been discovered by our partners or GitHub security engineers. You can also find secrets. Let's say you have AWS secrets that you're using for building your application, and many engineers make mistakes sometimes of pushing some secrets into their code base. With GitHub code scanning and secret scanning, you can easily find and detect those vulnerabilities and those secrets. And also there's a cool, if you have an organization on GitHub, you will find that if you go to the security tab, there's something we call a security center, and you can see all your repositories and all the vulnerabilities you have within all your repositories. So this is fully available for open source. So definitely take advantage of this free offering for open source developers. And I think the last part is GitHub Mobile. Ruth, you
So,
want to take this?
yeah, sure. So, if you do not know, GitHub has a mobile app, and you can get it on Google Play if you're on Android, or check App Store if you're on iOS. So, you can use the mobile app to manage your repositories and do a whole lot of interesting things. So you can also go to GitHub Mobile and check out the features, and you can also customize shortcuts on your home tab. So I think that's all the news we have for today,
Yeah,
right? At least a large part of
yeah,
it.
and
Because
there,
I closed my browser by mistake.
yeah, there was one more thing for GitHub Mobile. If
Mhm.
your company uses GitHub Enterprise Server, you can now GitHub Mobile is now live in beta for GitHub
Mhm.
Enterprise Server 3.0. So in case your company uses GitHub Enterprise Server, now you can have access to GitHub Mobile on server. And I think the last part is GitHub Enterprise Cloud. GitHub Enterprise Cloud is, the GitHub platform, packaged on the cloud for, companies and customers that
Mhm.
are interested in more advanced functionality. One of the cool things about GitHub Enterprise Cloud is you have an audit log, and you can export those audit logs and Git events to services like Splunk or an Azure Event Hub. So if you're a GitHub Enterprise customer, definitely take a look at getting a trail of all your logs, with all your engineers internally. So that's pretty much it for
Yeah.
news
But
today.
watch out for the next one. So if you want to be a speaker, right? Because like I said today we have like three speakers, which is something we've not had for quite a long time. So if you would love to be a speaker, please submit proposals at this link. I'm sure Andrea will like post it in the YouTube chat. Please submit your proposals, anything you want to speak about, even though you're not sure what you want to speak about, let us know and we'll help out with that. So please, wherever you are, you can submit a
Chill.
proposal and get to speak at the next meetup. Thank you.
Perfect. So, Ruth, you want to introduce the first speaker? I think you're on mute, Ruth. You on mute? Okay, I can.
Oh,
Okay,
fine,
there you go.
sorry. So we have our first speaker, like I said, Tubar Mamba, a software designer. So this term is really really confusing, but I think he's both like a developer and a designer,
Mhm.
right? So we have Tuba Mamba from South Africa, and Tuba is going to be taking us through South African tech communities and talking to us more about this event that's coming up, which I'm excited about. So over to you, Tuba.
Can you hear me? Hi everyone, my name is Thuba Mamba. I live in South Africa, originally from Swaziland. Yes, I'm a software designer. A bit about my background, I'm a self-taught engineer. I'm currently working for an American company in the NFT space. I think mine is brief. There's lots of exciting speakers coming up, but I'd love to invite you guys to the all new South African meetup sponsored by GitHub. We've got a lot of exciting stuff coming up. We've got lots of speakers coming up. And should you also wish to be a speaker in one of our meetups, please do reach out. As it has been mentioned, we've got a lot of exciting stuff going on in South Africa right now in the tech space. Lots of budding startups from healthcare to fintech, edtech, and etc. And the purpose of of these particular meetups, honestly, is just to bring together the community. Basically, what we're trying to do is to bring together community and code for the better growth of all engineers, all designers, everyone that's in the tech space, and to better connect with what's happening in the world all around us. And this is not just about South Africa; it's about the neighboring countries, Botswana, Swaziland, and all these other countries. I see a couple of people from different countries on this particular meetup as well. But this is basically an extension of an invite to everyone to please come and join us. We're excited about the stuff that we have coming up. The speakers are amazing. The surprises we have, it's really all so exciting. Please do register on Meetup. Thank you for sharing that. Please do register. Come through in October. That's when we will be debating this particular community. Excited to be joining all of you guys on this journey in tech. Excited to be connecting with everyone all around.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Tuba. Nice to have you. We'll
Thank
definitely
you,
check.
Tuba.
check out
Looking forward to it.
the next meetup. So for the next speaker, I want to introduce Bolaji Ayodeji. He'll be speaking on effective documentation, the key to open source growth. Bolaji is a software engineer, content creator, and a community engineer who works as a developer advocate at Commerce Layer. He's passionate about sharing knowledge, documentation, web engineering, Jamstack, headless commerce, open source. He's into a lot
Bolaji is
of
everywhere.
stuff. In this talk, Bolaji will introduce you to some unique documentation strategies that will enable you to create good, timely, useful, and sustainable documentation. You also learn how you can build a community around documentation and contribute contributors. So take it away, Bolaji.
Thank you so much for that introduction. Hello, everyone. Good day. It's nice to meet you all today, and thank you so much for joining this talk. Special thanks to the GitHub team for bringing us together to connect virtually. My name is Bolaji Ayodeji, and I am a software engineer, content creator, and developer advocate at Commerce Layer. Commerce Layer is an enterprise commerce API for modern developers. And what I do at Commerce Layer is I stand as a mediator between my company and developers in our products. Generally, I help developers be successful with their products and their crafts generally. Alongside my work as a developer advocate, I am passionate about sharing knowledge. I do this by writing on my blog, my weekly newsletter, giving talks like this. I'm also passionate about documentation, web engineering, headless commerce, Jamstack, communities, open source, you know, that kind of stuff. And sometimes also at night, I double as a community manager at Open Source Community Africa. And thank you once again for joining today's talk. So when developers or designers use or contribute to open source projects, effective documentation makes all the difference between a positive or negative experience. Providing effective documentation in itself can build healthier and inclusive communities. This can lead to increased usability and retention rates of a project. Sadly, most often open source creators produce ineffective docs and are not so sure how to plan or fix their docs. In today's talk, I would like to take you through a journey, and at the end of this trip, you would understand some unique documentation strategies that would help you create good, timely, and sustainable documentation. So let's jump right into it. So I have a table of contents here with all what we'll discuss, starting from an introduction to documentation to what next. So yeah, what is documentation? Generally, in open source, documentation refers to the information that describes a project to its users and contributors. Now, there's an emphasis here on users and contributors. And generally, the user is the individual that consumes the end product of that project. This can be anybody that uses the software. The contributor, on the other hand, is another individual who has relevant technical experience or skill sets that match the building blocks of that project. And because of that, that individual can contribute to the building blocks of that project. So generally, a contributor can be a developer, can be a designer, can be anybody who have relevant experience that is required to build that project. And sometimes, we might notice that this individual, both the user and the contributor, can be one person. As developers, we use a lot of projects, a lot of open source projects, and sometimes we also contribute to those projects. So at that particular point, we are doubling as both of this. So I would like to take you through some myths of open source, which I think would be a good way to start this talk, right? Some of the things that is commonly said about open source that are false, right? And the first one is that open source is the responsibility of the creator alone. A lot of people believe that, an open source project should just be built, maintained by one person, the person who created the software. And that's all that matters. It's the person's responsibility. No one asked you to build a project, right? But then that's wrong, because open source is open. It's a responsibility of everybody who uses the product in any capacity. It's our responsibility to build, to maintain, to shape the project to become what we want it to become, right? The next myth is that open source is just about writing code. And this is the biggest myth that even, that is leading to having a talk like this, because a lot of people have inefficient documentation because they pay less attention to this part of their project. They just believe it's just about writing code and that's all that matters. Whereas there are a lot of other aspects that go into open source, starting from the idea stage, the point where you're trying to research to find how you can solve a problem with an open source project. That's open source already going on right there. There is the technical aspect of it. There is the technical writing aspect of it, documentation, writing code, program management, designing of the software, and a lot of other idea pieces that go into building a project. So yeah, it's not just about code alone. The last one is that open source software is less secure than proprietary software. A lot of people prefer to use other softwares that are not open source because they feel, well, the source code is not online, so it's safer. And that's false, because whatever security strategies that is being used in that software you call safe is also being used in an open source project. So it's all about who is building the software and how well are they building it, right? So long the right strategies are used, you'll have a secure and solid software. And I saw this interesting tweet some time ago from Angie. Someone asked if a tool was open source, and she excitedly said yes and began to tell them how they could contribute. They looked so puzzled and they didn't actually care that it was open. All they cared about is that it was free. And this is how a lot of people see open source projects today. We only care about the fact that it is openly free and easily accessible to everyone. But we forget that the source code over there needs to be maintained. It needs to be developed so it can become something that we would want to gladly use. And this is a background context to everything we'll talk about today. So to start this journey, I would like to introduce you to some user personas, personas that allow us to understand what we need to, what we need to check and balance in our documentation. So I have a couple of personas here. I have the first one, end users. Like I mentioned earlier, users are individuals that consume the project. So the end users are those who actually use your project at the end of the day. This can be someone with no technical expertise or someone with some technical expertise. For an example, a project like Sugar Labs music block is being used by children, right? So you can expect the end user of that project to be someone without no technical expertise. Whereas a project like, let's say, React.js, right, is being used by developers, like me and some of you listening to this talk today. And that's pretty much it about end users. The next is developers. Pretty clear. Developers are those with relevant experience, with a relevant skill set to the building blocks of that particular project. Depending on the project, anyone who has that relevant experience, is a developer in this context. And the third persona we have here are designers. Designers are individuals who create the interface, designs, and all of that go into the design of a particular software. We also have technical writers. These are individuals who go ahead to, write documentation, create technical content surrounding the project, and anything related to technical content for the project. Next, we have program managers. These are individuals who manage, programs, manage projects. This can cut across several things depending on the context of the project. And lastly, we have financial contributors. These are individuals that do not contribute anything other than the financial support that keeps the project running. And yeah, so what we're going to be doing moving forward now is to see how all of these personas are coming to your project with several desires and how you've probably not been meeting their needs, and we'll look at how then you can meet up with those needs. And so before we moving forward, we should answer these questions. I have a couple of questions like this that would help you understand what you could be doing wrong with the documentation and how you can scale it up. And the first thing is, what do they want? All of this is the personas we've discussed. What exactly are they looking for in your project? What do they want to get out of your project, and what solutions does your project offer? For an example, the end user in the context of saying the music's block project I mentioned earlier, which is like a useful tool that help children to get up to date with music and stuff like that, right? So an example is that an end user wants to pretty much use that project. I want to explore music blog. I want to, have that fun and do all of that. So that's what I want. And then you need to be able to offer me that, right? For a developer pretty much maybe just wants to use your project to integrate with something else, and build something and all of that. That's what they want. And your project is able to solve that particular need, right? The next thing to consider is what could be their initial visit mindset when visiting your project. For an example, an end user, like I mentioned earlier, just wants to use a project. They just want to just see a link to either download the project or install or something very, very quick that takes them to using the project. Whereas a developer pretty much wants to understand, how does this project work? Do I need to install this, install that? How do I integrate it with this? They want to understand the underlying technical details of the project, and how they can get started with it. Understanding this initial visit mindset is very, very crucial in building a strategy that works for your documentation projects. For an example, a financial contributor doesn't really care so much about a lot of technical details. They pretty much maybe have some cash that they want to support or give back to the community. And they're looking for projects who align with their personal goals, or projects that are interesting, projects that are doing so well, and that's why they are on your project. So we need to understand this mindset. So we would be able to build strategies that would be able to cover for this mindset. The next thing to understand is, where are your users coming from? Search engine is an important aspect. I mean, the first entry point for many people to your project. A lot of people go on, as developers, you search, how can I do this? How can I do that? As designers, you try to find help on the search engine, and that leads you to several projects that can solve your problem. And why you need to understand this is because this informs you on the mindset of the user coming to your project. For someone coming to your project through the search engine means that they already have a kind of background context to what they want. It might not be clear, I might be searching about how to do this and this and that, and then it leads me to your project. I have a background context, right? I'm not so sure how your project can help me solve that, but it's your duty now to convince me with regards to that. For someone that finds your product from, say, social media, I really do not have so much background context. Maybe I was just scrolling through my Twitter timeline, and then I just saw someone, shared a post about your project, and I'm like, oh, nice, cool. Let me just check it out of no reason, and then it's up to you now to convince me that I might actually need your project. So you have to do more work to convince me, as compared to those who come from search engine, because those ones are already, they're looking for something. So it's just like for you to just say, hey, here it is. The next one is from backlinks. Backlinks are pretty much just links from another website to another website, kind of like a simple definition, right? So if eventually I'm reading a tutorial on a platform, and then there's a backlink to your website saying maybe you'll use this open source project to do this, that shows that I have some kind of background context. I was reading a tutorial with a reason, maybe something related to Node.js, and then I find my way to your project from that website, which means that the kind of work you need to do to get me to, get familiar with your project is like less than those that come from social media. And next are package managers, like npm, pip, we go there, you search, or you also get there through backlinks. There's like a line of, there's a kind of flow between all of these entry points before you get to your project. So when you understand that, next thing is, how much time do your users have to dedicate to your project? For you to answer this question, then you need to have already understood what they want. Knowing what they want will help you understand how much time they have. and how fast do they want that thing, that, how fast, and how fast can your documentation serve them? A financial contributor pretty much doesn't have so much time to read, all that stuff. They pretty much just want to understand what the project is all about, the vision, how helpful it has been, what do you solve, what's the solution, and success stories, metrics and stuff like that. That's what they want. And they want it in like a couple of seconds or a couple of minutes. Because most times financial contributors do not just support one project, they support more than one project. So they're juggling between different projects trying to find out which one fits their budget and their needs, and so they can sponsor. And you need to be ready to attend to those kind of users so that you can serve their needs and get benefits for your own projects. For someone like a developer, a developer might have more time to spend depending on how they come into your project or depending on their needs, right? Maybe a program manager, a project manager comes to your project because they're trying to, find new technologies or frameworks to use to improve the business and stuff like that. So they're kind of looking for the technical business related details. Okay, how much impact can this project have on the architecture of the company, stuff like that. And that's like an overview of how they are thinking before coming to your project. So a program manager might have more time to spend because they want to fully understand how your project can help them and how it can cost them some disadvantages, right? And the last question is the important one. How fast is the documentation currently able to serve these user personas? And at the end of all this service, speed and keeping up to date with all of this, how satisfied will these users be at the end of the day? Will I come to your projects with my desires, with my needs, and leave not satisfied? It happens a lot of times, and sometimes you do not know this. A financial contributor comes to your project and they really do not get what they need to decide if you're the best fit for their money. A developer comes to your project and they are not really sure if you're the right tool to integrate with their API, stuff like that. And another important thing to consider is how technical savvy are your users and contributors. I have some categories here: newbies, newbies, beginner, junior, intermediate, experts, distinguished. These are just several categories of users, right? A newbie is someone who is pretty much new to technology. A beginner is someone who is new to a particular technology, not necessarily new to tech generally. You might be proficient with JavaScript and you're trying to explore Python. You're a beginner in Python, but not a beginner to programming generally, right? And each of these technical expertise or levels have like different background technical context that would enable them to understand your project. So putting this in mind would help you be more inclusive with your documentation, with your style of writing, to ensure that you're not leaving out the newbies who do not understand what an asynchronous function mean, but you then have to choose simpler words. You're trying to make it as minimal as possible. And also considering the fact that expert developers or designers come into your project have like so much knowledge and they do not have so much time to read so simple content. And this is the idea behind building strategies. You then have to balance and see, okay, how do I balance and meet up to all my users, right? I want to ensure newbies are carried along, and I don't want to also bore the experts. I want to just give them what they want with the right technical terms that they require. So that balance there is what most documentation projects are missing out there today, and that's why you need to evaluate. So answering all those questions and understanding this, I would then move us forward to the effective documentation strategies. And like I mentioned earlier, the idea behind all of this is for us to, look at what you have currently and see how you can create that balance. You're trying to achieve something, right? And the only way to do that is to utilize effective strategies. And these strategies would vary differently across different projects based on your own different users or different needs, right? So first things first is define a documentation vision for your project. I can't stress this enough. A lot of projects, start out with just focusing on the code aspects, you forget about the fact that you need to communicate to your users and to your contributors, right? Define that vision for your project. What are the core reasons that you want people to engage with your project? What exactly are you trying to solve? You need to make sure you write this down. You need to make sure you get this ready before you even start your project. Like I said, this can work differently for different projects and for different needs. Next thing you want to look at is, what exactly is your target state? Generally most people do this in, it's like a general life principle. You just kind of start out something without really envisioning, okay, what exactly do I want? Okay, you just start. And it's not cool, right? You need to define a target state. Where exactly am I heading to, or where do I want to arrive at? Be clear and realistic about your documentation goals. Try to understand what you're trying to achieve. Earlier we discussed about how you might need several kind of documentation styles for several users. So are you thinking of having like a documentation with multiple types? There's like one for beginners, one for experts, different categories, stuff like that. Are you looking at documentation where you have different languages, localization and stuff like that? Do you envision that based on the vision of your project? Be realistic and focus on stuff that you can actually do. And the next thing now is for you to do a gap analysis between the current and target state of your documentation goals, right? You currently have something, and let's imagine that you don't have anything. Your current state is 0, you have nothing, and your target state is, let's say, X. So analyze what is the difference between where I am now and where I'm intending to go. And, doing this, you are now able to document the differences, the things that are higher from your target state and your current state. And this would now inform you on how to make next decisions, right? And now that you've understood what is missing, you know what you have now and you know what you want to have. So now you need to close that gap. And the way to do that is to introduce approaches and processes that would help you reach that target state. This can vary differently. For you as a project maintainer, you would pretty much understand this now, because now you know what exactly you are missing out. Now you know things that you've not really been putting into consideration, things you've been paying less attention to, right? And I'm sure you might be wondering, how do I get this data, to inform my decisions? Because if it's a new project, you really do not have any data, right? And the thing is, understanding those user personas help you to assume and make informed decisions in the sense of trying to prepare yourself for what you would expect. And you can rely on existing projects, rely on data from existing projects to understand how those projects are performing, or what they are receiving in terms of demand from users or contributors coming to the project, right? And you can actually start with something minimal, and you revamp based on the data you get moving forward from your users. So this is not a cookbook, a one-way kind of style to do this. It is a strategy, and you build a strategy based on your own demands, based on your own needs. But we need to understand this core concept so it makes us, more aware of things we should put our focus on. And once that is all done, you need to begin to set up and execute these documentation processes. Now you then begin to decide on what style of content you want to create, what length of content you want to create, what structure, based on all we've discussed, you are now able to begin to execute those processes, and ensure that you start small and prioritize sustainability. Talking about sustainability, make sure you have a sufficient plan. Make sure you have a team or a community to maintain the documentation. The same way you think of preparing your software, the software code, in a way that people coming into the code can, understand it easier enough for them to be able to contribute effectively. It's the same way you should think about the documentation, in a way that I want to make it easier for users and contributors to understand, so they can help me maintain and build it up. Sustainability is very, very important. I can't stress it enough. Make sure you build something that is sustainable, something you can continue to improve on, and not something that would die, right? And prioritize quality over quantity. The length, the magnitude, the quantity of your content do not matter, right? Sometimes it does, but then prioritize quality over that. Make sure you're producing rich content, something that is effective enough and that would help you, get to your target state for your documentation, or that would satisfy your users or contributors. As much as you can, I think this is something that most open source maintainers are leaving out, or that some are actually trying to, leverage now. Leverage other techniques aside from tech related content. You know, um, internet is evolving, people are evolving also. A lot of people prefer to read different contents in different formats based on how they are feeling or based on their needs. So you should not just have just text alone as much as you can. Like I said, start small. So you might not necessarily have to leverage all techniques at the starting points. You can start with text and evolve from that. And you can start with 2 techniques and evolve from that. So ensure that you are growing and you're building something that as much as you can is going to satisfy your users. Leverage on visual documentation, illustrations, wireframes, diagrams, stuff like that that kind of give the visual representation of how to use your project or how to contribute to your project. Put down some use cases. How have people been able to use your project? How can I use your project? What are the things that I might want to use your project for? Because a lot of times I'm not even really sure how beneficial a project would be to me, but explaining these use cases will give me an idea of how I can use it. And it's really, really, really cool for project managers and developers. Ensure to utilize working samples, show people how to integrate your project with something, with maybe React, with Vue.js, how it works as much as you can. Thinking about this now, it sounds like a lot of work, but then that's how much work you need to put into documentation. It's as important as how much work you put into writing your code. Build testimonials, you can leverage on that. This is very crucial for financial support, financial contributors and other personas. Show them people not just telling nice things about your project, but really, really saying how your project has been beneficial to their business or their franchise or anything at all, and ensure you can also leverage on metrics, put these metrics out to inform people trying to contribute to your project or use your project, stuff like that. You can begin to imagine, project managers trying to decide if your tool is the best fit for their business. And maybe one of their deciding factor is how many people are using a project. You can begin to picture all of that use cases right now. Also, I want you to build a community around the documentation, attract contributors, attract collaborators, sell your vision, recruit help, and kind of simplify the contribution process. We put so much effort into promoting the project, building the software, but we forget to put that same effort into building a community around documentation. You need to attract contributors to your documentation, make people want to help you build your documentation, and the starting point to doing that is by simplifying the contribution process as much as you can, considering all the user personas, considering all the levels of the user personas, simplify the process. And like I said, you would define this simplification based on your own needs and based on your own projects. Very, very important thing to note is try to automate and track your history over time. This is a journey, like I mentioned. You start from somewhere and you eventually grow your project. So track all the changes, so you can look back and see the things you did, how you can make changes. You can also do your own metrics on changes that matter, changes that brought this kind of results and stuff like that, right? And, as we get to the end of the talk, I have like 2 checklists. I have the bad documentation checklist and a good one. And, I just have a couple of questions that if your documentation can answer them, you're kind of like having a bad documentation. And if it can, in the other one, you have like a good documentation, just like your fun stuff to do. So first things first, if your documentation doesn't scale with your project, it's bad. It's not cool. It's not cool having to go through a project where, the version is currently on version 5.8, where your documentation is talking about version 3.8, stuff like that. Ensure that you are scaling. Most times people kind of like give documentation less priority to the point where you release a new version of your software and you do not even care to check with documentation to be sure that it's up to date. The moment you're deploying a new version, you should also be deploying a new version of documentation. They should go side by side because your documentation is as important as the software itself. So if the documentation repeats patterns, it's not cool. If it's ambiguous, if it's not inclusive to all the levels of the user personas we've discussed, it's bad. If it's missing the contributors guide, it's bad. I mean, if you do not want contributors, then make sure that your project is not it's the moment you put it out there and as an open source project, people assume that you want them to contribute to your project. So if you don't want that, find ways to put a disclaimer that you do not want contributors to your project. And I mean, that's nice. And if you know you want contributors, please ensure that you have an appropriate contributors guide. GitHub has useful templates that you can use to spin up something for this, right? If your documentation doesn't include support links, it's bad. How can I get help? As a user or as a contributor, how can I get help? Where's your forum? Where, stuff like that. If it doesn't have that, it's kind of bad, and, a lot enough of the bads, let's talk about the goods, some of the things that you see currently now that can tell you that your documentation is good is one, if your documentation can explain why your project was created, it's good, If it can explain the problems that your project solve in different capacities, in the best form of description, it's good. If it can explain how I can get started with it as a user or as a contributor, it is good. If it's, explain where the project has been used, companies and other projects that are using your projects to build cool stuff, it's really good. If your project can explain who is using it, reference purposes for financial contributors, project managers, business people who want to understand how beneficial your project can be to them. If it includes some live use cases, if it includes details about how I can contribute, if it includes where I can get help, these are qualities of good documentation, right? And to wrap up, I would like to introduce you to some useful documentation tools. We've talked about several things around personas and strategies and how you can now begin to build your own strategies. And I have a couple of tools that can help you, execute your documentation processes. The first one is the All Contributors bot that enables you to recognize all contributors, including those that do not push code. This is a nice way for us to build awareness about the several aspects of open source that is not just about code, appreciating people for different contributions, including just writing a blog post about a project or making a promotion for that project or just making a suggestion, a bug fix and raising an issue, it helps us to appreciate them and build that community inclusion. The next is the Good Docs project, which is like a project that has like very, 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 very good practice templates about writing documentation for open source software. I highly recommend you check it out. And the next is the Google Season of Docs program, which provides support for open source projects to improve the documentation. They provide you with technical writers, and you can leverage on this to take your documentation to the next level. There is also the awesome technical writing repository on GitHub that has a curated list of awesome resources about technical writing. So if you're trying to, decide on strategies and trying to decide on what to do next, you can check that out for a lot of tools and resources. There's also another awesome docs repository that contains a lot of awesome tools for documentation. I highly recommend you check it out. And yeah, so what's next? What's next? We've talked about documentation. We've talked about what you might be doing wrong, what you're not looking at and how you should be looking at those things. But what next? It's time for you to define a documentation vision for your project and prepare goals. Take this as a serious task. It's a very, very, very serious one because this is what determines, the adoption rates, retention rates of your project. While your developer experience matters, your user experience matter, documentation plays a vital role in all of that experiences. And start by defining your vision, and build a community around your documentation and ensure you prioritize sustainability at the early stages of your project. Please don't forget this sustainability. You want to be sure that every process and strategy you're building is kind of going to keep up. You'll be able to keep up with that moving forward. If you're going to be the only person building this project over time, you want to be sure that your processes, are within your capacity. If it's like two, if it's a community, make decisions based on all of that. Your documentation should provide users with a roadmap to use in your project. And that's pretty much it. A roadmap is a journey, right? You need to provide your users with that roadmap to using your project from the point where they have no idea what it does to the point where they are satisfied with your project. And same applies for your contributors, the point where they have no idea how to use or contribute to your project to the point where they have so much knowledge and they understand how to contribute to your project. Documentation helps your users succeed with your software. And that is one important thing that you want with your project. You want people to have success with your project. You want them to be happy with your project. It also empowers them to be self-sufficient. It empowers them to be able to use your product without you being there, helping them be able to contribute to your product without you having to be there. That's the power of open source, a project that's, it's like in one location and people from all over the world uses it without someone having to guide you like physically, And it also enables your users to provide you with further feedback that can enable you to fine-tune your project, revamp your project, improve it. And this is the organizational backbone of your project. And as much as you might not like to hear this, if you pay less attention to your documentation, you would probably have your project going down the drain at the end of the day. So yeah, that's pretty much it. Thank you so much for listening to this talk. I want you to, take this back and, have your own thoughts, decide on your own strategies, build what works best for your project and ensure that you are satisfying your users as much as you can. Thank you so much once again.
Wow.
And I think we said it at the same time.
That was a really, really good talk.
Yeah, really insightful session.
Really good. Yeah, I loved how he talked about targeting your documentation to different personas and
yeah, exactly.
List of links he shared to good documentation best practices where to start from. That was a really, really good talk.
Yeah,
that's like you really need to it's so important now because now I start to understand how GitHub is. Even we at GitHub will pay a lot of attention to
documentation.
We have people that are full-time staff dedicated to documentation and the whole team. So it's definitely really important to make sure that open source projects get contributors just for documentation alone.
Exactly.
So
and another thing is, he's talked about how to also attract contributors, right? How to, people coming to the project with different levels, right? He talked about like newbie and stuff. So yeah, that was another interesting thing I learned. And if you don't know, GitHub Docs is open source. So you can also, I think Andrea can drop the link in the chat. Initially, when it's, I think the week it became open source, I think I contributed, I solved some issues then. So you can, create issues and, contribute to GitHub Docs. Another interesting and lovely documentation I really like is Django. That's if you write Python.
yeah.
Django Docs is also really amazing and lovely. So yeah, I hope you all learned something. It was for everybody. It was both for a maintainer, a user, a contributor, and yeah, the talk was really awesome. So
perfect. Thank you so much, Bolaji. We appreciate
Bolaji.
you. You want to introduce the next speaker, Ruth?
Okay. So we have our next speaker is Damilola. Damilola is the co-founder of Future.Africa, and Damilola is going to be, talking to us about Future.Africa and sharing a whole lot. about how you can invest in African startups. So yeah, over to you, Dami.
Hi, Ruth. Hi, Martin. It's a pleasure meeting you, and thank you so much for getting me here. Right.
Sure.
We use GitHub, by the way, in developing a lot of our softwares in the company. So we're very tech inclined, and it's really nice to be here. So yes, my name is Damilola, as you mentioned. You could call me Dami. I'm the operating partner and one of the co-founders of Future Africa. So yeah, Future Africa is basically an early stage fund that connects global investors to mission-driven startups who are turning Africa's largest challenges into global solutions. So we really focus on innovators and startup founders who are doing really great stuff in Africa to change the way and then improve on the problems we're facing in Africa. Right? Yeah. So that's it about Future Africa.
Nice, interesting. I think Andrea should drop a link to Future Africa on the YouTube chat. So in case you want to check it out and invest in startups, or you know list your startup, if you have a startup, that is, you
Yeah.
can.
I mean, you don't necessarily have to have a startup. You could have an idea,
Okay.
and
Mhm.
you're
Oh,
an
nice.
innovator, right? We're trying to solve problems, so have an
Mm-hmm.
idea and be willing to be creative about that idea, and then make that idea into something. So,
Yeah. And how do you guys at Future Africa how do you think about the entire continent? Like, are there specific countries you're focusing on? How do you approach work that impacts the economies of the different countries in Africa?
oh, okay. So, first of all, right, we do not identify any countries. Africa is
Okay.
one, but focus on Africa as a whole. So,
Okay.
wherever we have like founders and startups from all over Africa, different countries. Yes, we might have majority from specific countries in Africa, but
Hmm.
doesn't mean we're focusing on those ones. We're really intentional and focused about the problems these people are trying to solve, right? Not
Hmm.
really where you're coming from within Africa. At Future Africa, we actually believe that Africa's severe problems will be solved by innovators, right? And then we'll use technology to leapfrog these challenges. So we're very keen about technology, very
Yeah.
technology inclined. If you're coming with an idea, we want to see how you're going to use technology to solve that problem. Technology is the future, it's the now. And we really want to integrate technology into the problems that we have in Africa and then solve those problems. We also believe that technology would actually help people facing the challenges live better lives in terms of productivity, right?
Hmm.
If you look at us, this is what technology is doing to us. We're here, we're having like a three-way call, or we're having, you know, a mini conference, as we'll call it,
Yeah.
and then we don't have to see each other. We don't have to be in the same room. We're using technology to solve this problem, to solve
Yeah.
the problem of time and distance.
Hmm.
So Future Africa is very, very keen about technology and how it impacts and solves the problems in Africa. We
Okay.
also see that challenges are rarely unique, right? So the truth is they're rarely unique to one country or to a
Mhm.
particular region. You have
Yeah.
similar problems in different countries, in different regions, right? And although we know that there are different social influences in these different regions and different countries, many of Africa's challenges are replicable across multiple countries. They're the same: healthcare, education,
True.
standard of living, housing and all. So this
Mhm.
presents a large opportunity for innovative entrepreneurs to make some very serious impacts, right, and change lives. So changing lives all over Africa, not just particular places.
Yeah.
So that's how we approach work at
Okay.
Future Africa and the economy and entire continent as a whole. So we use technology majorly. We do not focus on particular problems. We're looking at how we're resolving different problems. And we also look for problems that are similar in different jurisdictions, right?
Hmm.
Because that's where you have the opportunities for these innovators to hone their skills.
Yeah. And like looking for problems that are similar across multiple countries, you can have one solution that you can replicate,
Yes,
across the
Yeah,
board.
of course, nice.
yes,
That
definitely.
makes
Like the
sense.
payment, if you look at the payment sector now, fintech, right, is replicable across. You have Flutterwave in different
Mm-hmm.
countries across Africa. It's a
Hmm.
general problem, right? It's not just
Yeah.
one. one problem. If you look at the healthcare, we have a startup called Endas. So, we have 54 Gene who's doing great work as well. So if you look at what they're trying to solve, it's not just to Nigeria or to Ghana or to Kenya or to Sierra Leone or to, Mozambique, but it's to everyone. Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. One more question that I was thinking about is, in all of your, um, your work in Africa, specifically around funding, and for all your future founders, uh, how are you, you know, what are the key lessons you would like to share as far as like finding funding and getting the attention of Future Africa to get funding for the ideas? What are some of the lessons you would like founders to know, and like how they should approach you regarding funding?
Do you want my honest opinion? Or do you...
What's your honest
Okay.
opinion?
Okay, so in terms of funding, actually, one very key thing I'd say is, first of all, you need to build a great team, right?
Mhm.
And then have awesome leadership.
Okay.
Now, why am I very, heavy on teamwork is because you can't do it alone, right? As a founder, you have a great idea, you have a beautiful idea, but then you're not the only person that's going to bring that idea to life, right? No one has ever been found doing anything alone, right? So you need to have a great team and be a great leader, because you could bring a great team together.
Mm-hmm.
Leadership is not key. You're going to they're going to dissect, and then that idea is just going to fall into the cracks,
Mm-hmm.
because there's really no great team without great leadership. They work hand in hand, right?
Yeah.
So even if you have the smartest set of people in the same room, in the same place, you really do need great leadership, first of all, to bring them together, to guide them towards the vision and the mission of the company.
Yeah.
In Future Africa, we're very, very keen about talent, about the team, right? And that's why the startup team, we're very keen about the kind of people we come together with to do this work. You can't raise funds if your team is not good at what they do, because before you can convince an investor to give you money, you
Yeah.
have to know what you're doing, and you have to be very educated on the processes, and you need to be sure of yourself. So if you cannot be sure of yourself, how do you want to convince another person to give you millions of dollars, right? How do you want to convince an innovator to put his idea, to trust you with his idea, and trust that you're going to help him bring it to life, right?
Yeah.
We always focus on hiring only the best people. We look at hiring the best people, the best of the best. That's the 1%. Yeah, it
Yeah.
takes time. It does take time for us to find this talent, but when we do, we ensure that we have great leadership to manage the talent, so we don't have loss or retention. We're retaining the talents properly. That's one. I've learned so many things across the whole entrepreneurship space.
Mm-hmm.
I started my career in Jumia, and at that time,
Yeah.
Jumia was still like, early startups. People were not really into the startup community or how startups work.
Mm-hmm.
It just looks like, okay, we're delving into technology, using technology to solve the logistics problems in Africa.
Yeah.
And it was really interesting because I learned a lot of stuff, right? First of all, like, not first of all, but, I always tell people, always expect to fail. Because sometimes when you do not fail, you do not take a learning out, right? If everything's going smoothly for you, it's not ideal. Like, I feel like there's a problem when everything is all rosy and good. Even in
Exactly.
life, yeah, you have to fail once
That's
you do
true.
well, because you only learn when you fail. And failure doesn't mean you didn't do well,
Mm-hmm.
doesn't mean you didn't have the right processes or you were not smart enough,
Yeah.
right? It just means you have to work better at
Mm-hmm.
improving yourself in some certain aspects, right? So you always need to understand that in entrepreneurship, it's okay, very okay to fail. One of our values in Future Africa is the obstacle is the way, and that's what leads us and guides us into how we select our companies, how we work as a company, or how we also seek out investment for these companies, right? And when we say obstacles the way, what do we mean? You see, we see every challenge or problem as an opportunity to learn about them, and then
Mm-hmm.
we go ahead to provide solutions, right? So if we do not have these challenges, if we do not have these problems, we can't have innovators providing solutions to them, and there will be no future Africa.
Yeah.
Right. So Africa is very early in its development stages. We need to acknowledge its challenges, but we must also do the hard work, right, at solving them. We shouldn't just complain, but look at how to solve them. So, in summary, my 3 lessons that I'll tell people is,
Yeah.
first of all, expect failure. It's okay to fail. Secondly, build a great team with awesome leadership. And thirdly, the obstacle is the way. Yeah.
Perfect. Yeah, that's so
Thanks, Dami.
important.
I love that quote, obstacles.
Yeah, because like if you're not solving any real problem, like if in the advanced world, I was listening to a speaker from out of the UK yesterday, and he was saying that in the UK, like most of the issues are already been solved. But like when you come to Africa, there's like a million different problems to solve, and when you have issues like that, it's just opportunities, to build a business out of that, to figure out a solution that fits the marketplace that you can replicate across the board in Africa. So I love that catchphrase. The obstacle is the way. And I think the last thing is how can we learn more about if I want to learn more about the African startup ecosystem, where do you guys go to find information about which startup is coming up, and like where do you get your information from, and how can maybe Africans in the diaspora that are looking that tech inclined are looking for ideas to build a team and maybe invest in a team in Africa, like how where do you find those information?
Oh, sure. The information is in tech. It's here. It's online, right? First of all. But to be very specific, right, there are many resources to learn about the African ecosystem and to also learn about Future Africa. You have our website. Please feel free to visit the website. It's Future.Africa. Very simple. The simplest website you can ever think about. Future Africa, Future.Africa. Right, yeah. But I'd also like to plug the Future Africa blog here and the podcast. We have a blog and then we have a podcast. We have this very interesting podcast series. It's called Invest in the Future. So if you use an iPhone, you just go to your podcast and then search for Invest in the Future. It'll bring it out. We're very technology inclined, right? So I'm not going to tell you we have books and books. There are no books. Everything's on the internet. Yeah. And then we also have, a lot of our information and then information about the African ecosystem on blogs like Tech Cabal, Stairs. These are also our portfolio companies.
Okay.
We have TechPoint.Africa, we have WeTracker, we have it on Disrupt Africa. These publications are the heartbeat of Africa's startup movement, right? So if you really want to learn about startup, if you really want to learn about the Africa ecosystem, just go to one of these blogs. You'll get it. But then please feel free to check our blog on our blog and our podcast. It's free.
Okay.
We don't charge you, so please, you can access it there. And then you can go on our website to see so many beautiful, so many amazing innovators and what they're doing in Africa, how they're changing and improving on problems in Africa, what they're doing to change the way and standard of living of Africans. Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you, Dami.
You're very welcome.
I really liked. Looks like we have a question on YouTube from these ideas can be at the foundation stage. There should be a structure that is operational. Is that a question?
Yeah, I think that's a very great question, right? So I think what he's saying is that these ideas, right, that innovators have, can they be at a foundation stage or should they be a structure that is already operational? So it depends on what you mean by structures that are already operational, right? Because we have different levels.
Mm-hmm.
Now, as an investor, you probably also want to be careful where you put your money in, right? So we need to have substance as well, right?
Yeah.
We're not saying have a full-blown Dangote with all the departments and everything, right? But we're saying at least have operational stuff. Let's be able to see the traction. Let's be able to see what you've done. Let's see how far you've gone. is this a genuine idea? Are you being genuine? Are you just trying to raise money to make a difference, or you're raising the money for personal things? So we have due diligence processes as well, because people
Yeah,
have trusted us with their monies, and we can't just make those monies sunk cost.
make it
So
rain.
yes, can't. Because I mean, if they're doing giveaway, I'll probably collect. So definitely, right? They don't need to be so like high level operational. It's helpful if it's high level operational, because that's when you see some companies raising Series A, Series D, Series B, right? That's high level operational. And then you see there's
Mm-hmm.
the pre-seed, which is before you even become fully blown out. So
Yeah.
there's different levels that can be assessed, but then you don't have to be fully blown, right? You can be we need you to be operational, right,
Okay.
but not massively operational.
Okay.
Yeah.
So typically, you guys invest in like Series A or pre-seed, like
We're
where?
more focused on pre-seed because we're looking at innovators trying to change things in, Africa. We're looking at so when you say a startup, right, it's not a fully blown company. It's not
Mm-hmm.
a unicorn. Most startups are like, technology inclined, and you have a product,
Yeah.
right, you're trying to sell. So we're more focused on pre-seed and seed investments, because that's when you're starting, and that's when we know you need the capital.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, not when you've, created a lot of revenue and you probably just need so much more money to expand into other areas, right?
Yeah.
So yeah.
Perfect. Let me see if there's any other question. Okay, looks like that's all we have. Awesome. Thank you so much, Dami.
Oh, you're welcome.
Yeah, thank
Anytime.
you for
Anytime.
Uh,
sharing all that here.
it's
Thank you
really
so
nice.
much.
It's really nice to hear from other perspective, investors, and how
Mhm.
you're thinking about, the whole continent of Africa. So
Yeah.
thank you. We would like to have you back at some point in the
Sure.
future. So
Sure.
Yeah,
we'll
sure.
definitely reach back out to you.
Yeah,
Uh,
sure.
thank you so much.
Okay.
All right, Sammy.
All right then. Bye.
Bye
Enjoy
bye.
the rest of the evening. Bye.
All right. And I
Me.
think the last thing before we go to Zoom is that
Mm-hmm.
next month is our Universe conference. So
Yeah.
yeah, the Universe conference is our yearly event for developers to come talk about some of the cool things they're building with GitHub. It's a really packed event, and it's completely free. So please mark these days on your calendar: October 27 to through 28. You can go to githubuniverse.com to find all the different to register. Registration is free. So, and you can find all the different speakers and topics they want to talk about. And so this is a page like register. So you can save the date in your Google Calendar or any calendar you use. And you can also subscribe for updates. So there'll be deep dives into like different topics. Some of the topics will be on demand, and there'll be some like keynote addresses from our CEO.
Yeah, I really loved the keynote last year.
Oh yeah, the keynote was really cool.
It was awesome. I hope this one is like, plus.
Yeah,
Really.
it's gonna be cool. Trust. We do our best.
Yeah, sure.
And there'll be like some live interactive sessions as well, and
Mhm.
workshops, and AMAs and roundtables. So definitely go sign up. Ruth, have you signed up yet?
Not yet. But
Yeah.
I'll definitely attend it.
Yeah, so guys, go sign up, and we are looking forward to having you at this event. It's a global developer event, so
Yeah.
that's my universe plug there. And so that's pretty much it for
Today,
today.
yeah, today
Uh,
was like really full. I think.
yeah, it was a really full day. So I want to thank all the speakers we've had today. Um, uh,
Mhm.
Tuba,
Bolaji,
Ayodeji, Bolaji,
mm,
Dami. We want to thank all of you guys for coming and speaking and talking to the audience all around the interwebs. Ruth, any last words from you before we go on Zoom?
Okay, so I want to thank the audience for sticking here, and I hope you picked up like some lessons from the different sessions that happened. So keep contributing to open source, and if you want to, documentation as well, and also check out Future.Africa and share your ideas or your startups with them, or apply to get funded. And hi Bolaji, your session was amazing. So I think you can come join us at the Zoom session where you can ask some more questions, network, and play Kahoot games and win GitHub swags.
Yeah, the Zoom session will start in about 10 minutes. So let's
See
go.
you all there.
I'll see you over there. Thank you. We'll see you at Universe or sometime next month for the October edition. Bye bye,
Yep.
guys. Thank you.
Bye.